Jimmy Olsen always felt way too big for the small town he grew up in. When you're a flamboyantly gay, rail-thin black kid, in the Midwest, it doesn't necessarily go over well. But Jimmy Olsen found a way. His first successes came in photographing skate parks. He was an underground photographer who would shoot music videos for his friends. This led him into the music scene, where he became well known for his pictures, which were said to almost capture the soul of the artist. This was during the rise of social media, and everyone wanted to give this kid a shot. I mean, he's this 18-year-old kid from nowhere, and he shows up with a camera, he creates magic. Jimmy's pictures didn't just capture the person, they captured the character. That's because Jimmy has always been obsessed with identity. Jimmy was one of 6 adopted kids, so he never even felt comfortable or at home in his family. He felt too big for his small town, and then when he moved to the big city, metropolis, he felt too small. It was there that his fashion career took a wild turn. Jimmy started working for the Daily Planet. In the rise of social media, Daily Planet, formerly a massive news conglomerate, became a confederacy of different bloggers, reporters, and channels that were independently fact-checked by the company. This allowed for a completely bipartisan view of the world, basically a news station run by reporters rather than by a corporation. Jimmy loved it. This is the sort of punk shit he was always into. And this new branding of the Daily Planet as the people's news drew in real hot shots, including a woman named Lois Lane. Lois is a valedictorian genius. I can't say enough good things about her. She's also an incredibly nice, sweet, funny, cool person. She's a bit type A, but you would be too if you were always the smartest person in the room. Lois loved Jimmy. Jimmy didn't know what to make of Lois. He'd never had anyone react to him this way. But Lois wanted Jimmy to be the visual component to her words. Hooking into the Lois Lane brand early put Jimmy Olsen in an incredibly unique position. You see, Perry White, the chief of editorial at the Daily Planet, was putting Lois as basically the point person on this new emergent phenomena: superheroes. Now, there had always been superheroes in comics. Characters like the Sandman, the Spectre, Our Man, Starman, stuff like that. Dr. Midnight. They were imaginary. Except after the Batman showed up in Gotham, a tide of criminals began to emerge who were bizarre and totally different from any pattern of criminal behavior in the United States. At this point, Jimmy and Lois were almost equally respected, although Lois Lane's star was rising quicker. Jimmy was sent to Gotham to cover a series of bank heists that in reality were mass shootings. Sometimes all the hostages would be killed, and sometimes they'd all be released. It didn't make sense. It was almost like it was determined by random chance. Lois helped Jimmy, and researching into this, Jimmy ended up being present in Gotham National Bank when it was attacked by the criminal responsible for these mass killings. The monster called Two-Face. A handsome man in a wild suit, half of it intentionally burned and distorted. His face monstrously deformed from acid melting the flesh, and yet driven by a mania, a disassociation that allowed him to act both as judge, jury, and executioner based on the flip of a two-sided coin. A supervillain. And Jimmy was right there. You see, the thing is, when he took the picture of the supervillain, he realized that was Harvey fucking Dent, former district attorney of Gotham City. If you've read American Alien or seen Agent of Batman, you can see how Jimmy's decision to use this information and to go forward with putting it out into the world changed culture permanently. Jimmy's tiny role of being in this bank when Two-Face machine gunned down tellers after a bad coin flip changed the world. This wasn't some costumed kook. This was a real person society had already been following, and after an interaction with a crime family and something called the Batman, Two-Face had been born. A normal person had been transformed into a monster. And it wasn't just some arbitrary thing. Dent had worn a costume, had done the same thing it appeared the Batman and the Superman were doing. My God. Were these heroes inspiring criminals? Jimmy was fascinated by villains and villainy, the idea that someone would willfully project themselves as an evil character to the end of not financial gain, but instead destruction and chaos. As more and more of these figures emerged in and around Gotham City and in other cities in the world, Jimmy was on the front lines with a camera wherever he could be. Because of his proximity to supervillains, Jimmy Olsen became known publicly as Superman's pal, despite never meeting Superman. In fact, the majority of Daily Planet reporters, other than Lois Lane, had never seen Superman in person. Jimmy became obsessed with the idea of capturing a picture of the Man of Steel, because getting a picture of this guy seemed weirdly hard. In fact, it was almost impossible to find a clear picture of Superman's face. During an interview with billionaire Lex Luthor, Luthor speculated, "Isn't it strange? Doesn't it seem like someone is hiding pictures of Superman? Shouldn't we have one by now?" Now, of course, you and me know from Agent of Batman that it's Batman doing that, but Jimmy doesn't know that. So Jimmy's like, oh, it's a conspiracy. And you know what? He's right. Jimmy eventually built up to an extremely influential and well-regarded series of photographs where he went to Arkham and basically did fashion shoots of the prisoners wearing the garb they were wearing when they were arrested. Jimmy was also the first person granted an interview with another person who had an extremely complicated relationship with identity. Aaron Scott, the Joker, who gave Jimmy Olsen an out-of-character interview where he made it clear that his intention was to kill as many people as possible until he is killed by a superhero. Yikes. Jimmy Olsen rapidly became a very polarizing figure publicly. People felt that he enabled supervillains by giving them a platform and calling them supervillains instead of what they were, domestic terrorists. But by this point, there were enough superheroes like the Arrow Vigilante and the bizarre Blue Beetle in Bloodhaven that it was almost impossible to describe what was happening in real life without these comic book terms. Society began to have very conflicting views on superheroes, justice, the government, money. Once Superman appeared out in public, it started changing everything, and a ball was rolling, dominoes were falling, and we were headed somewhere strange. Jimmy knew this better than anyone, and he wanted to be on the front lines. And it seemed like there was only one other person on the front lines: Lex Luthor. Jimmy partnered with Lex Luthor during his Justice League project, but during this began to realize that Luthor himself was entirely corrupt and that the team of superheroes he had brought together were actually people who had been manipulated, blackmailed, or outright criminals themselves. Jimmy had no idea what to do. He was increasingly alienated from his best friend, Lois Lane. She'd been spending more and more time with her boyfriend, a man named Clark Kent, who himself was another independently hired reporter. At first, Clark and Jimmy didn't know how to handle each other, but as years passed and the world changed around them, they became closer and closer friends. In a moment of intimacy that forever changed their relationship, Clark revealed something he had never told anyone: that he was also adopted. How this worked, since Clark looks just like his parents, Jimmy wasn't sure. But Clark wouldn't make that up, and Jimmy felt let in. For the first time with Lois, Clark, Perry White, Jimmy had started to feel kind of like he belonged to something, like he belonged to a family. But Clark was always on Superman stories and so close to so many of the things Jimmy was fascinated by. Jimmy began to feel totally alone in Metropolis. He began to rely on Luthor more and more and found himself locked into this billionaire's strange, psychotic world of vendetta against Superman that he cannot let go. Jimmy, during this time, also becomes friends with Lex Luthor's ex-wife, Barbara Ann Minerva. Through Barbara Ann Minerva, he hears the story of Zatanna, a young woman who was kept by Luthor for years and years and years in an attempt to allow Lex Luthor to live forever. But that's another story. After the Flash goes on TV and goes, "I'm not a robot, I'm Barry Allen, the scientist everyone thought was dead, and Lex Luthor is fucking blackmailing me," Jimmy is in a really weird position. See, it was Jimmy who broke the story that Lex Luthor was behind Oliver Queen's Justice Society, which saved Hawaii from a terrorist called Toyman. Jimmy's all messed up. He doesn't know the stuff you and me know from watching the video. JSA, Toyman. Luthor is arrested for blackmail but released on bail to house arrest. And in this time, manic and desperate, disgraced in the eyes of the world, Luthor reveals to Jimmy Olsen that Clark Kent is Superman. He realizes that Jimmy has no one else left to turn to. Luthor explains that this has all been a setup and Jimmy has been a pawn. Jimmy is horrified. What little he had of a surrogate family in Metropolis have all been lying to him. And when Luthor offers him a weapon, a kryptonite weapon called Metallo, Jimmy calls Clark and asks to come over. In Clark's own apartment, Jimmy Olsen transforms into Metallo, accusing him of being Superman, of attempting to take over the world, of lying to him their entire friendship, of brainwashing Lois Lane, of creating supervillains. Clark Kent, confronted by Jimmy in the Metallo armor, apologizes. Jimmy, you're absolutely right. This was all a mistake. I had a list, and Clark has a list, of things I wanted to accomplish when I became Superman. And he shows Jimmy the list, and the list says, world peace, heal the planet, inspire hope. And Jimmy looks at the list. Is this real? And Clark goes, yeah, it's real. And it was a mistake. Becoming Superman was a mistake. I have to be real with you, Jimmy. I can't bullshit you. You're one of my best friends. Batman broke into my apartment on the day of the Cerberus Summit. American Alien issue 4. Batman broke into my apartment and he scared the living shit out of me. And I just thought, there's no way I can let him be the face of whatever this is, of superheroes. It can't be some violent guy who breaks into your apartment. People will just be scared. I knew I had these powers and I had to try to use them somehow. So I put on a cape and I put on the symbol. And yes, Jimmy, I know it was a mistake, but now I've inspired so many people and so much has happened, I don't know how to stop it. Okay? So I'm sorry. You're right. You're right. I lied to you, and I haven't been a good friend to you. But don't do this. Don't become one of these fucking supervillains. Don't do that. That's wrong. That's playing into a narrative, man. It doesn't have to go that way. Trust me, I know these people. It doesn't have to go that way, Jimmy. We can just turn off the robot now. Or we can fight, and we can wreck Metropolis like you're a supervillain. Is Jimmy Olsen a supervillain? Is that what all your time with them led to? You giving up and deciding that your inner world is worth destroying the outside world? Because that's what supervillains are. They're people who project their inner chaos onto everyone else, Jimmy. And that's not you. Everything I learn about why I am the way I am, why I have the powers I do, and my past, Jimmy, it makes me want to know less. You are more important to me than being Superman. And that's the truth. Jimmy looks at the list again and he says, you know, Clark, I gotta tell you, I feel like Lex Luthor would think he'd be on this list. Clark looks at Jimmy and goes, well, why would Lex Luthor be on that list? I don't care about Lex Luthor. Jimmy thinks of all of the hours he's heard Luthor ranting about Superman. And he's Clark Kent. It's Superman that's bullshit. Jimmy, who struggled with identity his whole life, finally gets it. The tallow off. Clark, what am I gonna do? They're gonna put me in jail. I got this stupid armor. Jimmy, let's just take it off and burn it. You want to cover up that I came here to kill you? Oh yeah, Oh, I'm not a cop. Did someone say I was a cop? This never happened, Jimmy. Are we good? And Jimmy goes, yeah, Clark, we're good. And Clark goes, yes! And embraces Jimmy. Jimmy, of course, immediately crying. And that's when a monster that used to be a woman, now distorted into a werewolf-like entity, magically enchanted and willing to kill anything in its path to settle an old grudge, comes plowing through the wall. More on that and Zatanna Zatara in the final chapter of the Superman Kryptonian epic saga that comes before the Starlight Emperor. So I'm not going to spoil any of that. The Society. Endangered Species. Coming soonish to this channel. Bye.